Уважаемые дамы и господа,
Ladies and
вчера мы
gentlemen,
завершили
yesterday,
председательство Российской Федерации в Совете
Russia
Безопасности
concluded
ООН.
its
В этот раз
presidency at the UN
оно
Security
совпало с
Council. This time it
70-летним
coincided with the
юбилеем
70th
Организации
anniversary of the
Объединенных Наций и
Organization of the
соответствующими
United
мероприятиями на
Nations
высшем
and
уровне.
relevant
Мы
high-level
убеждены, что ООН
events.
доказала
We believe that the
свою
UN
эффективность
has demonstrated
не
its
раз и не два
efficiency
в
on many
качестве действенного
occasions
инструмента
as an
урегулирования
efficient
конфликтов,
instrument to
реагирования на
settle
глобальные вызовы,
conflicts, respond to
сопряжения и
global
координации
threats,
позиций различных государств
streamlined
и
and
их
coordinate the
объединений.
positions of various states and
Россия один
associations of
из
states.
основателей ООН,
Russia is one of the founders of the
является
United
сейчас постоянным
Nations.
членом
It is
Совета
a
Безопасности,
permanent
и
member
мы
of the
ответственно
Security
подошли к
Council,
исполнению своих
and we
председательских
were responsible
функций,
in
стремились
implementing its
продвигать позитивную
chairmanship
повестку дня,
functions. We were trying
выстраиванию
to put forth
коллективных
a
шагов
positive
на
agenda and build
основе принципов
collective
устава
steps
организации.
based on the
Наше
UN
председательство
Charter
проходило на
principles.
фоне
Our
дальнейшей
presidency
деградации
took
ситуации
place
на Ближнем
as the
Востоке и на
situation in the
севере
Middle East
Африки,
and North
на фоне
Africa
всплеска
kept
там
on
терроризма,
degrading
экстремизма,
as a result of
включая
outbursts of
деятельность
terrorism and
исламского
extremism and
государства, так
activities of the
называемого.
so-called Islamic
Мы еще год
State.
назад в связи с
A
этими
year
тенденциями
ago, as a result
предложили
of
провести
these
комплексный
trends,
анализ
we
обстановки в
proposed
регионе с упором
carrying out
на
a comprehensive
взаимосвязь между
assessment of the
урегулированием
situation
разворачивающихся
aimed
на его
at
территории
streamlining the
конфликтов и
efforts
борьбой с
aimed at
террористической угрозой. И на основании
settling
этой
conflicts
инициативы
there
мы
and
провели
combating this
вчера
threat.
министерское заседание
As a
Совета
result, yesterday
Безопасности.
the ministerial
В
at
ходе
the Security
обсуждения
Council
мы
took place. As
услышали
a
разные
result of
точки
this
зрения, и,
meeting,
конечно,
various
вы наверняка имели
views were
возможность
expressed.
следить за
You
ходом
probably
дискуссии,
managed to
но
watch
в
the
одном, я
discussions,
думаю, мы все едины.
although we are
Угроза
united
терроризма,
in
вот уже
the
она у
fact
наших дверей,
that
она
the
угрожает
threat
не
of
только
terrorism
региону,
is
но и странам, которые с ним
imminent. It is
соприкасаются,
threatening not only the region itself,
и
but
тем, кто
other countries
расположен
adjacent
достаточно
to it,
далеко от
and
Ближнего
even
Востока и
those who
Севера
are
Африки.
far
И
from
в этом
the
контексте
Middle East and North
мне кажется,
Africa.
что многие
In these
восприняли с
circumstances,
интересом
I
и
believe that it was an interest of
позитивно инициативу
everybody
президента Путина о необходимости создания
welcome
широкого
the
антитеррористического
Putin's
фронта, который опирался бы на
initiative to create a
международное
broad
право, на
anti-terrorist
устав ООН прежде
front
всего, и
based on
который
international law and
действовал
the
бы в
UN
согласии
Charter.
и в тесной
This
координации с
coalition
государствами
would
региона,
act in
несущими
coordination with the
основную
states of the
нагрузку
region, would
в противостоянии
bear the basic
террористам
brunt
и
in
экстремистам.
confronting
Мы
terrorists and
представили вчера
extremists.
членам Совета
Yesterday,
Безопасности
we
проект резолюции,
presented
который,
draft
как нам
resolution to
кажется,
the UNSC
сможет послужить
members, as
основой
we
для
believe
дальнейших
would
дискуссий
form a basis for
с тем, чтобы
further
сформировать
discussions
общее
in order
понимание
to
в
develop a
отношении
common
подходов к
understanding
антитеррористической
of
борьбе. Рассчитываем,
approaches
что испанское
to
председательство в
fight against
этом
terrorism. We
месяце
believe that the Spanish
организует
presidency
работу
this
над
month
этим проектом.
will organize all
В
necessary
сентябре
activities in order to implement
особое
this
внимание
project. In
уделялось
September,
также
special attention
поразившему
was attached
пространство Ближнего Востока и Северной Африки
to
и напрямую затронувшему Европу
the
миграционному кризису.
migration crisis,
По
which
инициативе стран
engulfed Middle East,
Евросоюза
North Africa,
обсуждается
and
проект
affected
резолюции,
Europe. Upon the
который
initiative of the
позволит
EU countries,
принять
draft
первые
resolution is being
меры
discussed, which
по
would provide for the
нейтрализации
first
этих угроз и
measures
рисков,
needed
этого
to
вызова
neutralize
серьезнейшего.
this
Мы удовлетворены
threat,
тем, что
this
проект резолюции
challenge. We are
сейчас
satisfied with
в
the fact
нынешнем
that
виде
draft
после
resolution, as it
многих
is present in
переговорных
this
раундов
form, as a result of
приобрел
various
правильный, на наш взгляд,
negotiations,
вид. Он выстроен
has
в русле
become
уважения международного права,
appropriate
и
in
в
terms
его
of
формулировке
respecting
исключают
international law,
расширительное
and its
толкование того
wordings
мандата,
rule
который
out
в этом
excessive
проекте резолюции сейчас
interpretation of the
содержится.
mandate provided
Надеюсь,
for
что и
by
остальные
this
члены
draft
Совета
resolution.
Безопасности, у
Hopefully,
которых
other
еще остаются по
Security
другим
Council
разделам этого
members
документа вопросы, смогут их с
be
авторами
able
согласовать, и
to
мы
agree upon
эту
all the
резолюцию
outstanding
примем
issues
в обозримом
with the
будущем.
co-sponsors of the
Активная
resolution,
работа
and
велась по так
it will be
называемому
adopted in the
сирийскому
future. We were
химическому
working
досье.
actively on
В
so-called
практическую
Syrian
плоскость перешло
chemical
создание
dossier,
совместного механизма
and a joint
Организации
mechanism
по запрещению
was
химического оружия и ООН
established with the
по
participation of
расследованию
the
фактов
Organization
применения
for
токсичных
the
веществ
prohibition
в
of
качестве
chemical weapons
химического
in the
оружия в
UN,
Сирии.
and
Мы
the practical
добиваемся
activities of this
распространения
mechanism
действия этого
include
механизма и
the
на территорию
development of
Ирака,
the fact-finding
где уже
mission. We are
есть
going to
несколько
spread this mechanism to the
подтвержденных фактов
territory of Iraq,
применения
where there is a number
игиловцами и
of
прочими террористами
substantiated facts of
отравляющих
the use of
химических веществ.
poisonous substances by
Мы отдельные
ISIL and relevant
заседания
terrorist
провели
organizations. There
по
were
гуманитарным
special
последствиям
meetings devoted to
сирийского
the
кризиса,
humanitarian consequences of the
рассматривали
Syrian
и ситуацию в
crisis,
других
as well
странах региона,
as
прежде всего в
discussed the
Йемене.
situation in other countries of the
Несколько
region,
раз
including that in
проходила
Yemen. A
дискуссия
couple
по
of
этой проблеме. Мы все едины
talks
в
took
Совете
place on this
Безопасности
issue.
в
It is our
необходимости
common
немедленного
view
прекращения
that we
боевых
need to
действий,
stop immediately
неперспективности политического урегулирования
that
через
there can be
инклюзивный
no
национальный
alternative to
диалог при
political
посредничестве
settlement through inclusive
Организации
national
Объединенных
dialogue with the
Наций.
mediation of the United
Мы приняли
Nations.
заявление 4
A relevant
сентября
statement was
с осуждением
made
терактов,
on the
которые
4th of
прошли в
September,
Сане в начале
condemning
месяца,
terrorist attacks
и
which took place
убийство
in
двух
Sani at the
сотрудников
end of month and
Международного
the killings
комитета
of members of
Красного
the
Креста. К сожалению, нам не
International Red
удалось
Cross
согласовать
organization.
заявление
Unfortunately, we failed to
21
agree
сентября
upon
в
the
связи с
common
эскалацией
statement on the
насилия и
21st of September
увеличением
as a result
разрушений в
of
результате
escalating
авианалетов на жилые
violence
кварталы
and
в ряде
destruction
населенных пунктов.
resulting from
Принята
shelling
резолюция,
in the
которая
residential
продлила
areas. A
на
resolution
1 год
was
мандат
adopted which
миссии
extended
ООН в
for a
Либерии,
year
где
UN
обстановка
mission mandate in Liberia,
стабилизируется,
where the
и у нас
situation
есть
is under
общее понимание,
stabilization,
что
and there is a common
будем
understanding
вести дело к поэтапному
that
сокращению численности
we
этой
would
миссии и
incrementally
эвентуальному
reduce
завершению
this
ее
mission and bring
деятельности.
it to the
Принята
conclusion.
резолюция,
The
которая продлила
resolution
мандат
was
еще
adopted, which
одной миссии
extended the
ООН,
mandate of yet
миссии ООН по
another UN
поддержке
mission
в
for
Ливии. Там подтверждается, что
Libya.
нынешняя ситуация в этой стране,
The
которая
situation
характеризуется
in the
расколом между
country,
двумя
which is
противоборствующими
characterized by
лагерями,
the split between
и
two
характеризуется
confronting
расширением
camps,
захваченных ИГИЛ территорий,
and
требует более
ISIL
решительных
gaining
усилий
more
международного
ground.
сообщества
Thus,
по
the situation
нахождению
requires more
политико-дипломатических
efficient
развязок
measures
кризиса.
made
Мы
by the
активно
international community to
поддерживаем
find political solution to
специального
this crisis.
представителя
We
генерального
actively support
секретаря
the UN
Бернардино
Special
Леона
Envoy
и
Bernardino
надеемся,
Leon
что его
in his
шаги по
activities, and we
налаживанию
hope that
политического
his
процесса
steps
венчаются успехом.
aimed at
Обсуждались
political
вопросы
settlement would be a
отношений между
success. We
Суданом и Южным
discussed
Суданом,
the situation
положение
and
дел в
relations between
суданском районе
Sudan and
Абьей.
South Sudan, the
Все
situation in the Abyei
отмечали, что
region.
перспективы нормализации
It
обстановки
was
в Южном
noted
Судане
that
дают надежду
there are
на
huge prospects for the
дальнейшие позитивные
normalization of
подвижки и в
situation in
межсуданском
the region,
урегулировании.
and progress
Ну и
could
в
be
том числе в
achieved in the
решении проблемы
intra-Sudanese settlement
Абьея.
and in the
Члены Совета,
settlement of the
по
Abyei
крайней
region.
мере,
Members of
целый
the
ряд из них
Council, a number of
приветствовали
them
активные усилия
welcomed active
России
efforts
по
undertaken by
содействию этим
Russia
процессам.
in order
Как
to
вы знаете,
contribute
в
to the
сентябре в Москве
settlement of
прошли
those
впервые
conflicts. As you know, in Moscow, for the first
трехсторонние
time,
консультации с
trilateral consultation
участием
took place with the
министров иностранных
participation
дел
of
Судана,
foreign
Южного
ministers
Судана
of Sudan, South
по
Sudan,
урегулированию отношений
on
между
the
двумя этими
settlement
странами. Мы предприняли эту
of
посредническую миссию в
outstanding issues
поддержку
between
тех
the two
усилий,
countries. This
которые
mediation mission was
осуществляет
implemented in
Африканский
support
Союз
of
и
the
его
efforts undertaken by
специальные
the African Union
посредники.
and its special
Состоялось
mediators.
расширенное заседание по Афганистану.
There was an extended
Отмечался беспрецедентный всплеск
meeting on
террористической
Afghanistan
активности, стабильно
that
высокая
noted
статистика
an
жертв среди мирного
unprecedented
населения
outburst
в
of
результате
terrorist
боевых
activities
действий.
with
Мы убеждены,
huge
и с этим
casualties
согласны
as a
все члены
result of
Совета
the
Безопасности,
terrorist
что перспективы
activities.
мирного
So we
урегулирования
believe
афганского
that
конфликта
the
остаются, к сожалению, неопределенными.
prospects for the settlement of
Обеспокоенные
the
напряженной
conflict in
ситуацией на
Afghanistan are vague.
афгано-таджикской
We
и
are worried
афгано-туркменской
regarding the
границах,
situation at the
где
border between
проявляют
Afghanistan
активность
and
различные
Tajikistan and
группировки
Afghanistan and
боевиков,
Turkmenistan,
включая
where
ИГИЛ,
terrorists,
обеспокоены
including
и
those from ISIL,
продолжающимся
are very active.
ростом
We are
наркопроизводства
concerned
и
about
наркотрафика
the
с территории
ongoing
Афганистана.
drug trafficking
Попутно замечу, что во
coming
многом
from the
схожие
territory of
озабоченности были
Afghanistan.
выражены и
Similar
в ходе
concerns
закрытого
were
заседания,
expressed
которое мы
during the
провели,
closed
посвященного
meeting
обсуждению
dedicated
проблематики
to
деятельности
the
регионального центра ООН по превентивной
work of
дипломатии
the
для
UN Regional Center for
Центральной
the
Азии.
Preventive
Так
Diplomacy
что
for Central Asia.
вопросов на повестке дня Совета Безопасности меньше не становится.
The
Мне
agenda
кажется,
of the
сентябрь
Security Council
прошел
continues to be
живо,
very extensive.
заинтересованно.
I believe that
По
in
крайней мере,
September all
мы
discussions
лучше
were
понимаем
very
друг друга.
fruitful.
Прежде
At
всего в
least
том,
we
что
managed
касается
to
террористической
understand each
угрозы
other better.
на Ближнем Востоке и на
At
севере
least
Африки.
in
И рассчитываем, что наши
terms of
испанские
the
коллеги,
understanding
которые
of the
сейчас возглавили
terrorist
Совет
threat.
Безопасности на
I
текущий
believe that
месяц,
the
продолжат
colleagues which assumed
обсуждение
presidency for the
этих
upcoming months
проблем
would
с
continue
прицелом на
discussing
выход на
those
новые
challenges,
договоренности.
aiming
Спасибо и
at
готов
reaching
ответить
new
на ваши
agreements.
вопросы.
Thank you. I'm ready to answer your questions.
To keep the tradition, I want to give the first question to UN Correspondent Association President. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Minister Lavrov, on behalf of United Nations Correspondents Association, thank you very much for this press conference that is very well needed at this point. And my question is this. You circulate a resolution that in practically says that the states that are attacked by the terrorists must be part of the anti-terrorism coalition. Do you think that this resolution is going to have any chance to fly or to get to a vote soon?
Знаете, мы находимся в дипломатическом
We are
процессе.
in a diplomatic process. There are many resolutions which were initiated and have turned out to be unrealistic. But I don't know, how can you dispute this very simple sentence. If a state is an object of terrorist threat, how can you leave this state aside from collective efforts aimed at curbing this threat? This contradicts the international law, the UN Charter principles, and this is not practical from the pragmatic point of view. Those who are attacked and those who protect themselves, if you want to fight the same militants who carry out these attacks, you need to cooperate with all those who confront them.
Could I ask you a question anyway, sir? And I want to ask you about the issue of Palestine. Now, with Russia being new or liberated or consistent assertiveness, are we likely to see a Russian push towards realizing a two-state solution and realizing peace in the near future?
Вы так спрашиваете, как будто
They are asking as if Russia is now the only country who is not seeking a two-state solution. This is our consistent position since Soviet times. In the late 1980s, the Soviet Union recognized the Palestine state, and our position remains unchanged. And I think no one has any doubts that this problem remains unsolved, not because of Russia. We've just met Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the Council for Cooperation of Arab States with the Gulf states. I've met the Secretary General. They all express their special gratitude for the consistent and unchanged Russia's position on the Palestinian-Israeli issue.
Foreign Minister James Bays from Al Jazeera. The US coalition says it's fighting ISIL. With your airstrikes, you now say your military is targeting terrorists. Can you be specific for us? In addition to ISIL, which specific groups in Syria do you believe to be terrorists?
If it looks like a terrorist, if it acts like a terrorist, if it walks like a terrorist, if it fights like a terrorist, it's a terrorist, right? I would recall that we always were saying that we are going to fight ISIL and other terrorist groups. This is the same position which the Americans are taking. The representatives of the coalition command have always been saying that their targets are ISIL, al-Nusra, and other terrorist groups. This is basically our position as well. We see eye to eye with the coalition on this one.
Jonathan Watchell, please.
Yeah. Joseph Klein, Canada Free Press.
Excuse me, it's for Jonathan.
I'm sorry.
Jonathan Wachtel with Fox News. Are you saying, Mr. Foreign Minister, that Russia is now in complete synchronized military action with the West in combating terrorism? And is Russia going to take a lead role in the battle now? As we're seeing now, it's quite active.
Don't put the words in my mouth. I said what I said. I said, and I repeat it once again, as regards what are the targets of the coalition and what are the targets announced by Russia, we have the same approach. It's ISIL, Nusra, and other terrorist groups.
Yes, Ragida, please.
Mr. Minister, it's Raghida Dargham of Al Hayat. You just said, as you mentioned, you said you met with the GCC and Arab countries ministers. I'm sure you've heard some reservations from their part on your position vis-a-vis Bashar al-Assad. If he stays, when does he go? Is it in the beginning of the transition or at the end? So why are you allying yourself with Iran and Hezbollah and the regime in Damascus and creating this impression that you are entering a civil war on their side, whereas all the Gulf states are trying to build new relationships with you and trying to work with you on a transition out of the situation? Why are you spearheading the fight against
Ragida,
ISIS?
This is a very distorted and perverted perception. We stated bluntly that the goal of our operation, in response to the request of President Assad, and on the basis of the decision granted by the Russian parliament to the Russian president in accordance with the Russian constitution, the goal is terrorism. And we are not supporting anyone against their own people. We fight terrorism. As far as I understand, the coalition announced ISIL and other associated groups as the enemy. And the coalition does the same as Russia do. Somehow, some people try to present the coalition action as leading to a political settlement, and Russia fighting the same people is being perceived or presented like defending the regime. It's absolutely unfair. And this, I believe that honest journalism is required in this situation, and that the analysis which you do must not ignore repeated explanations given to the world media, to the world public by my president and by other Russian leaders.
What did you hear from the GCC countries in your meeting? Did you agree on anything, or are you remaining in disagreement?
No, we agreed on many things, including on the need to fight terrorism, including on the need to promote political settlement in Syria in strict compliance with the Geneva Communique. Transition on the basis of mutual consent between the government and broad spectrum of the Syrian society opposition.
Yes, the gentleman.
Minister Lavrov, Nick Bryant from the BBC. Russia has dropped bombs on opposition groups who have received backing from the CIA. Do you regard them as terrorists?
You stated this as a fact. Do you know something I don't know?
Graham, by reliable
Well,
sources.
many things have been widely reported. For example, during the
So you've
crisis,
not targeted them?
during the hot phase of the crisis in Ukraine, some respected TV channels were showing images as if this was happening in Ukraine, while later they apologized and said that those images were a few years ago taken in Iraq. So many things. The Russian Ministry of Defense presented full report on what was hit and what were the targets. We targeted ISIL-associated depots, armaments, and sites.
Associated Press, please. Associated Press.
Thank you very much, Minister Lavrov. And for those of us who remember you from your days here, welcome back to the United Nations. Two questions. First, is Russia coordinating its airstrikes with the United States? I know you mentioned this with Secretary Kerry yesterday, but also with the French. And is there any kind of a joint military and diplomatic strategy? And as a second question, since you're trying to clear the air of all of these possible misperceptions, how do you answer those people who are saying that the military action that Russia is taking now is a diversionary strategy to take attention away from Ukraine and what was going on there?
Well,
Thank you.
I cannot speak about something which sick minds are presenting to the media. It's always possible, you know, to find some absurd interpretation of what is going on. I hope you don't share these views, and I hope no one in this room believes that in order not to distract attention from Ukraine, you should not fight terrorism. I hope this is not the case. And some governments, some politicians cannot handle more than one situation at a time. But situation in Middle East and North Africa is requiring urgent response. Everyone is saying that ISIL is expanding. More than 1 year after the coalition started its work, the ISIL territory is expanded, and they want to grab more and more. On the coordination, I don't know why you highlighted the French participation. They are part of the coalition, as far as I understand, and we have many questions as regards the explanations of their activities and their strikes on Syrian territory. They say that they enjoy the right of preventive self-defense in accordance with Article 51 of the Charter. I haven't heard of any preventive self-defense concept because what they did, and I believe the Brits did the same, they said we hit the target, we killed a couple of people who were contemplating bad things on our territory from Syria. No proof, no nothing. And I think that you cannot avoid the impression that the legal basis of the coalition activities in Syria is really flawed. You cannot operate without Security Council mandate. You cannot operate without the consent of the country in question. And we said from the very beginning, when the coalition was announced, that it was a mistake not to go to the Security Council. It was another mistake not to engage the Syrian government. Had they come to the Security Council, I believe we would be able to agree a concept which would be acceptable to all. And the words about illegitimacy of the Syrian regime, against the background of what we did on chemical disarmament, I believe this is very hypocritical. The Syrian regime was perfectly legitimate when we all agreed to deprive Syria of its chemical weapons. We welcomed in our resolutions in the Security Council the decision of the government of Syria to join OPCW, and everything was fine with everybody. I don't understand why getting rid of chemical weapon requires a legitimate regime cooperation, and on the other hand, fighting terrorism requires no cooperation with this regime.
Yes, Joseph Klein, Canada Free Press. I want to switch for a moment to the issue of refugees. Does Russia support the proposal that's been circulating regarding establishment of global quotas for admission of asylum seekers from Syria and neighboring countries in which Russia would agree to participate? Thank you.
You mean the Egyptian billionaire proposal to buy an island or what?
Well, no. Actually, I've heard high-level UN officials talk about, and also the Hungarian foreign minister sitting where you are now proposed a couple of days ago, the notion that rather than Western Europe have to absorb disproportionately refugees, that there be more of a global distribution of the allocation of these refugees. So I'm just wondering what your reaction to that proposal.
Frankly, I have not looked into it. I haven't heard of it. I heard of an island idea, to buy an island for refugees. But I believe instead of trying to work with the symptoms, you have to go to the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of the problem is havoc in the Middle East and North Africa created by military interventions, starting from 2003 and continuing.
CBS.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Pamela Falk from CBS. The Syrian coalition opposition president was here yesterday and said that the Free Syrian Army is prepared to confront Russian forces, which it considers illegitimate. Do you put the Free Syrian Army on that all other terrorist groups? Are they considered a terrorist group by you? And therefore, are you reading from the same page because the United States and the coalition do not?
No,
Thank you.
No, we don't consider Free Syrian Army a terrorist group. We believe that Free Syrian Army should be part of the political process, like some other armed groups on the ground composed of the Syrians themselves, of the Syrian patriotic opposition individuals. This is absolutely necessary for the political process to get hold and to be sustainable. We consider terrorists those who have been recognized as such by the United Nations and by the Russian Federation legal system. Jabhat al-Nusra has been listed as a terrorist organization. And by the way, interestingly enough, ISIL was not. We have proposed to list ISIL, I think, a few months ago. The Americans tried to persuade us that ISIL is part of Al-Qaeda, which, according to our expertise, is not true. So yesterday in my speech in the Security Council, I reminded about our proposal and said that we must come back to the need to list ISIL as a terrorist organization in the Security Council.
Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Abdul Hamid Sayam from the daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi that is based in London. Thank you, Foreign Minister, for your press briefing, and my question is about Palestine. I have noticed that President Putin did not mention the word Palestine. The Russian policy is very determined, very bold when it comes to every issue, only when it comes to Palestine. Now, do you believe that this quartet, it gave Israel the chance to confiscate more land, build more settlement, put thousands of Palestinians in jail, and build the separation wall, while the quartet is silent? Why are you still clinging to keep this mechanism in place when it's not doing anything except saying the Palestinian land is almost finished and the two-state solution is an illusion now? Thank you.
Well, first, President Putin met with President Abbas on the 21st of September in Moscow. They meet regularly, I think several times a year. Sometimes they talk over the phone. And there is no misunderstanding on the part of our Palestinian friends about the Russian position. Second, yesterday in my speech in the Security Council, I specifically said that the key conflict which breeds extremism is a Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And that decades and decades of unsettled nature of the Palestinian problem, in my view, is probably the most important single factor allowing the bad guys to recruit more and more extremists to their ranks. And this position absolutely unshakable. And number three, regarding the quartet is not silent. The quartet adopted yesterday a statement which says most everything which we wanted to say, including the settlements, including other unilateral steps, including the need to implement resolutions of the United Nations, on the state of Palestine, on Jerusalem, and so on and so forth. The quartet, unfortunately, can only speak at this time. It is not silent, but it does not do more than speaking. Our envoys are visiting the region, are talking to Israelis, talking to Palestinians, to Egyptians, Jordanians, Saudis, and everyone expresses, dissatisfaction with this deadlock. But somehow, so far, we were not able to move forward. We have been taking some pauses in the quartet activity when the United States, asked for 9 months to deliver. Then it was not possible. In any case, the quartet resumed its work now. We decided, and this, I think, is a very important step, on which Russia has been insisting for many years, we decided to engage much closer with the Arab League, if only because the Arab League is the author of the Arab Peace Initiative, which is about comprehensive settlement in the Middle East, and which is accepted by everyone, including the Security Council. And we do believe that the goodwill incorporated in the Arab Peace Initiative must be respected and recognized, and we would be continuing our insistence that the Arab League is more and more involved in the work of the quartet. Probably this might make a difference, though at the end of the day, we have to lean on the parties to make sure that both of them do what they oblige themselves to do in the previous agreements.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Foreign Minister. We understand yesterday Secretary Kerry mentioned that there will be a military meeting to deconflict the strategies of Russia and the United States during the period of the bombings. How that is going to happen and how it's going to work? When just yesterday it's been reported, the U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter mentioned that this is not the kind of behavior that we should expect professionally from the Russian military, referring to the bombings, and also saying that this is compared to pouring gasoline on the fire, referring to what's happening in Syria. And how you expect now to have a meeting, and what is the outcome that you are foreseeing?
Well, first, I cannot really share Secretary Carter's assessment. We know about many fires gasolined by Pentagon in the region. And we believe that our position is absolutely in line with international law. If Secretary Carter says that we behaved, in what way he said? Unprofessional way. Because we did not do what?
He's referring to the bombing in Russia and from the Russian military on the Syrian area homes, referring to what is being reported in the ground, that it was not specifically targets of...
If I recall it right, I think he did not, he wasn't able to confirm those reports that it was a wrong target. But I think he used the word unprofessional regarding the communications between us and them. Well, for more than 1 year, the coalition has been bombing Syria without the consent of the Syrian government, without the okay from the Security Council, without informing anyone. And some coalition members complained to us privately that sometimes they are prevented from using the air force by the command of the coalition, for whatever reasons, I don't know. We indeed are interested in cooperation with the coalition. We cannot be part of the coalition, which operates without the Security Council mandate and without the request from one of the countries on whose territories they operate. But we understand the reality, and we want to avoid any misunderstandings at minimum. At maximum, we want to have a cooperation which would make the counter-terrorist fight more efficient overall. Therefore, Presidents Putin and Obama, when they met on the 28th of September in this building, they agreed to establish military-to-military contacts. We discussed some details of how to get there with Secretary Kerry yesterday. And very, very soon, first contact would take place, and you would know about this.
Chinese media representative, please. Please switch on your mic.
Hello.
It's good.
Jane Tom from China Sina News. In terms of cooperation in Syria crisis, what kind of expectation do you expect from the Chinese side? And secondly, Chinese President Xi Jinping just visited the United States and has a lot of cooperation with America. What is your concern or what is your comment on his visit? Thank you.
Well, first, our Chinese colleagues are very close partners of Russia on international affairs, not to mention our bilateral relationship of strategic partnership, which are really blooming and reached unprecedented level. On international affairs, we believe, and our Chinese friends share this belief, that our cooperation and coordination in international arena is one of the most important stabilizing factor of the world system. And we regularly coordinate our approaches to various conflicts, be it Middle East, be it North Africa, be it Korean Peninsula, and very frank, very confidential consultations take place regularly. China has been helping on the Syrian crisis in particular as a permanent member of the Security Council. We have been preventing the radical approaches, including the request, to endorse the use of force against Syria in the Security Council. And I believe we managed to reach a situation which allowed us to adopt the Geneva Communique for political settlement of the Syrian crisis, which everyone supported and still believe, everyone believes that this document is the basis for any future activities. The Chinese Minister of Foreign Affairs, my good friend, participated together with me and others in the Geneva conference where this Geneva Communique was agreed and endorsed. There are many other examples. If we all want to ensure success of the process which Stefan de Mistura is launching, he would require support from outside players. And I am convinced that among these outside players must be Russia, United States, countries of the region, and China as well. We are trying to find a way to create necessary conditions for de Mistura's process to get launched. Not easy because of some, preliminary demands, which should not be the case. And on the visit of President Xi Jinping to the United States, well, I have nothing to comment. We watch, of course, this, this event as we watch other events, and we are interested in big powers to be in consent with each other, to resolve inevitable differences by negotiations, by meeting of minds. We do the same with our partners in the West and in the East. And of course, our Chinese friends briefed us about their impressions about this visit.
Let's move to the backyard. Yes, gentlemen.
Minister Lavrov, Jessica Lemazurier from France 24.
Excuse me, the gentleman over there. The gentleman,
Yes. First of all, gasoline is a much better word than the confliction. Benny Avni of New York Post right now. On that quartet statement that you mentioned before, this was, as far as I remember, the first time that the quartet failed to call for a direct negotiation between the two sides. Could you explain why?
Well, the quartet reaffirmed all the basic resolutions and all the principles on which the settlement must be achieved. And the quartet agreed that the envoys of the quartet would continue working with both sides. I don't believe that we need to bluntly reiterate the obvious every time.
Yes, the lady over there.
Thank you. Somini Sengupta from the New York Times. Just to clarify, are you or are you not targeting with your airstrikes any groups supported by the US-led coalition? And secondly, are you planning to expand your airstrikes to Iraq? And would you do that only with Security Council authorization? Thank you.
No, we are not planning to expand our airstrikes to Iraq. We were not invited. We were not asked. And we are polite people, as you know. We don't come if not invited. And on the first one, well, you know, I don't know whether if the United States-led coalition targets only terrorist groups, then we do the same.
Yes, please.
Thanks for your briefing, Minister. James Reinl from Al Jazeera. The US-led coalition...
You're also from Al Jazeera?
Yes.
And you? Oh.
It's a big media organization. The US-led coalition has been launching airstrikes against Islamic State for some time now. They speak about degrading and destroying the group over an extended period of time, possibly years. With the Russian addition of the military involvement, what are your military objectives in terms of destroying the group, and how long do you expect it to take?
I cannot speak for the military planners. I can only say that the difference which we believe we can make is explained by the fact that we would be coordinating with the Syrian army, and it is, I think, commonplace, recognized everywhere, that airstrikes alone would not resolve the problem.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Lavrov. My name is Ali Barada from France 24 and An-Nahar newspaper in Lebanon. We all know that you are a master of diplomacy, and you like to praise your U.S. counterpart. You talked about nice things when you... please,
no, we talk about bad things nicely.
Please. would you please, as journalists, you giving us kindly this press conference, tell us what are your differences, what are your worries about how deep the differences are between the United States and Russia, and are you just, as a master of diplomacy, you and Mr. Kerry, trying to contain the spillover of this heavily involvement in the Syrian crisis? Thank you.
Well, I will recommend, President Putin's speech at the General Assembly and some of his other speeches, including his interview to Charlie Rose. It's part of, partly philosophical question, partly practical, partially practical. We believe in collective action. We believe in the effort which is based on international law, on the agreements reached and never broken. And we also believe in the need for serious countries to respect legitimate interest of others. That's basic approach of Russia. And our, not only American, but some other Western colleagues are not always reciprocate. There are plenty of examples of broken promises, of broken deals, including in the midst of the Ukrainian crisis 2 years ago. Some other situations. I don't want to get into these details unless you ask me.
Syria, please. What are the major differences?
You said about diffusing, you know, the differences. And when Presidents Putin and Obama met, I can assure you that it was a very constructive atmosphere, very friendly, and they discussed things in a very open way, and they understand each other. For some reasons, not this total, I believe they completely understand each other. But for some reason, this complete understanding cannot be translated in complete joint action, in complete cooperation. And on Syria, well, it is the reading of the Geneva Communique, if you want to be bureaucratic. Geneva Communique says transitional governing organ, and that's what the Americans say must be done, and in their view, this means that Assad is going out. We ask them to read the deal completely, because the end of this phrase says, on the basis of mutual consent. That's what was agreed in Geneva in June 2012. And if we all are credible, you know, with what we negotiate, then we have to find a solution within the parameters agreed. And any preconditions, you know, everything is possible. And ISIL would be defeated if only Assad disappears. For me, not very serious. Not very serious. And you know, we have been demonizing individual leaders. We, not us, but international community, or part of international community, I beg your pardon. Saddam Hussein, hanged. Is Iraq a better place, a safer place? Gaddafi, murdered you know, in front of the viewers. Is Libya a better place? Now we're demonizing Assad. Can we try to draw lessons, you know, that there must be priorities? Yes, there must be political change in Syria, no doubt about it. And Geneva Communique is something to which we committed ourselves, and we would never change this position. But ISIL is building a caliphate. It is not Al-Qaeda which strikes and goes. They are occupying territories for creation of the caliphate. They have their own financial system. They have even the currency, I think. They provide social services. With this ideology, it's dangerous. They want, you know, to build a caliphate from Portugal to Pakistan, taking everything in between. So we cannot forget about the political process, but we cannot condition fighting ISIL by, you know, changing political system in Syria. We believe that, first of all, fighting terrorism must be a priority, but parallel with this, not after, but parallel with this, many things could be done on the political front. And for this, all the Syrians, the entire spectrum of the Syrian society, as Geneva Communique goes, must get together and must agree on the key parameters of the state: secular, democratic, elections, periodicity, and the rights of all ethnic and confessional groups to be respected and mutually consolidated in a document. When everyone Alawites, Sunnis, Druzes, Armenians, other Christians, when all of them know that there is a deal between the opposition and the government, that this would be the new Syria, and if this deal has been endorsed, for example, by the key powers, maybe by the Security Council, maybe when all these minorities and majorities know that their interests are being taken into account in the constitution or whatever law must be agreed, I think that the problems of one or another personality would be much easier to resolve. That's what we discussed with John Kerry, with Gulf countries. Yes, we disagree on it, but I still think that putting a precondition. I gave you examples of Iraq, Libya, where people believed and publicly claimed that remove this guy and everything is going to be fine and democratic.
Due to upcoming noon briefing, we have time for 2 more questions, please.
Thank you, Minister. Michelle Nichols from Reuters. Thanks for doing this. Syrian and Iranian troops and Hezbollah fighters are preparing for a major ground offensive backed by Russian airstrikes. Is this true?
Well, I told you what the Russian Air Force is doing. The Russian Air Force is targeting ISIL and other terrorist positions in coordination with the Syrian army.
Are you planning to back this major ground offensive that's being
I'm not a
prepared?
military planner. I told you the political concept which was endorsed by the president.
Yes, please.
Thank you. This is Majid Gilli from Kurdish Rudao Media Network. Russia now is involved in the war in Syria, and you mentioned fighting ISIS and coordinating with the Iraqi government also intelligence-wise. I wanted to ask, will the efforts to countering ISIS, Russian efforts, will be short to only airstrikes? Will Russia provide arms to non-state actors such as the Kurds, who are widely known as the most effective force fighting ISIS in Iraq and in Syria with the agreement of the Iraqi government and the Syrian government? Will Russia arm the Kurds, in short?
We provide arms to the Kurds through the Iraqi government. And the information center which was established in Baghdad, it embraces the representatives of the military of Iraq, Syria, Iran, Russia, and the Kurds are represented. The Kurdish autonomous government is also represented there. This information center is important because all participants either have troops on the ground, as Iraq and Syria on their own territories, or have an intelligence information which is useful for planning counter-terrorist actions. And especially it is important because as a result of the coalition activities, ISIL, yes, is being hit in Iraq, but quite a number of ISIL fighters are pushed out into Syria. So this is an information center which could make the counter-terrorist activities more efficient. And yes, we respond to Kurdish requests for arms and do it through informing the government in Baghdad.
And the very last.
Thanks a lot. Matthew Lee, Inner City Press, on behalf of the Free UN Coalition for Access. Thanks a lot for this long briefing. I wanted to ask about Turkey's airstrikes on Kurds. There was a briefing here earlier today in which a Turkish minister was pretty critical of Russia's airstrikes, saying that if they go beyond ISIS or Daesh, they're against them. What do you think of the Turkish air campaign largely against the Kurds? And also, if you could, Yemen was an issue on the Security Council's agenda this month, which it seems like the Council is not having a lot of success. What do you think can be done to bring those airstrikes to an end there?
Well, our strikes do not go beyond ISIS, and I said this, and ISIS and Nusra and other terrorist groups recognized as such by the Security Council or by the Russian law. The crisis in Turkey, we hope, could be resolved politically. We hope that the elections which are planned for, I think, next week, could help resolve these domestic difficulties. And of course, we hope that the use of force against terrorists would not be spread to just other opposition groups. The last one was on Yemen. Yes, as I said, we proposed a statement to of the presidents of the Security Council to urgently stop the bombings and to have some humanitarian access. We talked to Undersecretary O'Brien, the OCHA chief. They have very serious concerns, and I hope we talked to all the Gulf countries about this. We hope very much that the responsible approach and the interest in keeping Yemen a place you can live in would prevail.
Thank you very much.
Thank you and all the best to you. Write the truth, only truth, nothing but the truth.
Prime Minister. Thank you very much.
She is despotic, I can live with.
Man, I tried to ask you to receive me at 9:30.